This is Matt in the Man Cave, guys. I got pumpkin spice latte coffee. It's late nights after dark. Thanks for watching all the videos. Thank you for posting. If you haven't subscribed, what am I going to say? Subscribe, hit the bell, and to my Patreon partners, thank you for supporting me in the what? The Man Cave. Guys, I have Hunter and what? Hannah. And over here I have Rocky and Isabella. And the man who has recently come back to the Man Cave, listen very carefully, his daughter is in charge of naming all the animals on the Man Cave set. And so again, you have what? You got Hunter, you have Hannah, and then you have Rocky and Isabella after his daughter's name. Thank you, Isabella, for coming back to the Man Cave. It's good that you brought Dad back. Hey, listen, guys, today we're going to be in what? In the Word. I love that. We're going to be in the Word of God. We're going to be in John chapter 2. We're looking at verse 24. Listen to this because this is going to tie into a current event that happened just today dealing with deception. But Jesus would not entrust himself to them, for he knew all people. Friends, I've heard this preached so many different ways, but let me tell you the correct way. Jesus didn't trust people. Jesus had something going for him that you and I don't. Jesus could look into a person's heart and see what was actually there. And that's how people are judged in the end days. When we stand before God, God knows those individuals who belong to him, and he knows those individuals who do not belong to him. But while Jesus was on earth, this text says he would not entrust himself with those individuals because he knew them. He knew what they were about. He knew the deception within their heart. He knew the darkness and the depth of that darkness. He understood it. And you're like, Matt, how do I apply that truth today? Friends, we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. I was talking to my landlady, and I was talking to her, and she says, hey, I've rented out the other part of the duplex, and it's a young lady coming in there. And I says, oh, when she gets here, I'll go ahead and help her, unload the truck. I'll introduce myself. I'll tell her, hey, if you need anything, feel free to knock on the door. And she says, no. She says, don't do that. I want you to get used to her, and I want you just to go slow with it, because I really don't know that much about her. Basically, the landlord is wise, and the landlord is saying, there's something in my spirit, and I have a check about it, and I don't know if I fully trust this individual. I'll rent to her, but I think something's going on here. And I don't want you, okay, basically landlady saying, I'm not going to vouch for her being a moral person, being a person of integrity. I don't know if she's a thief. I don't know if she abuses drugs. I don't know who she knows and who knows her. I don't know any of that. So I want you to be what? My landlady is telling me this because she likes me. She says, Matt, I want you and your family to be wise. And friends, in the end days, that's what we have to be. There was an example on NBC Nightly News just this evening, and here's what it was. There was a knock on the door. The elderly man looks out the door, and he sees a gentleman, and it's FedEx. He has the hat, he has the shirt, he has the pants, he has the shoes, he has a badge on, but not the official badge that has the picture of the individual. So he opens it up, carries the box in. 2 seconds later, another man runs up the sidewalk, and guess what? It's a home invasion. And they close the door, and this is an elderly couple with their daughter. Now, their daughter's probably about 30 years old. What do? First and foremost, they're saying, hey, we're actually undercover cops, and we know what you've been doing. And the elderly people are like, we're not doing anything. Well, for our safety, we're going to duct tape you until others come. See, it's always deception. It's always lies with thieves, okay? And friends, these thieves actually had a little bit of morals, because there are home invasions where if there's women involved, they're brutally gang raped. Oh, do you understand what I'm talking about? They're brutally raped. But in this one, they're just duct taped, and they're gagged, And then they go through the entire house and they steal $125,000 along with the safe. They wouldn't open the safe. They were threatening to kill him. They were threatening to chop him up. They're giving all these different threats. Give me the combination for, I'm going to kill him. This kind of stuff. But they wouldn't give him the combination of the safe. So what do? They put the safe in a box and carry it out to a van. Now, guys, you want to hear the crazy thing? When you look at the guy that has the FedEx uniform on, that got the people to open the door, he's clean cut. It's not like, well, I can tell a criminal. I'd be able to see that. No, you wouldn't. He looked like he was middle class, groomed, clean. No tattoos. He's not looking like a thug. He doesn't have an MS-13 tattoo. He's not ganged out. He looks like a legitimate person. So what is this individual who's robbing people doing? He's using the skill set that God had given him for good, and he's using it for evil. That's what he's doing. He's basically, every time he does this, he's selling his soul and he's securing his eternity in hellfire. For what? For money, for jewelry, for watches, for gold, for silver. He got away with $125,000 worth of stuff. I'm going somewhere. God's word says this in Jeremiah 17:9. This is God talking, okay? The heart is deceitful above all things. God goes on, and desperately wicked. He asks a question of you and I. Who can know it? He says, you can't know your own heart. You don't even know your own heart. You don't know the capacity that you could do for evil if he wasn't restraining you. So no man knows his heart. That's why David is saying, Lord, will you search me? Will you examine me? Because I don't even know myself. So God is telling you and I, and he also was speaking while he was on earth, I don't trust men, and I'm not going to entrust myself to men because I know what's in their heart. You and I don't know, but Paul did. He says this, there's none righteous, no, not one. There's none that understand God. There's none that seek after God. He uses the word all. And all in the Greek, and all in the Hebrew, and all in Aramaic mean the same thing. All have gone out of the way, and they've become unprofitable. And friends, we live in a time where men have become unprofitable. Unless a man has surrendered to the lordship of Jesus Christ, he's unprofitable. He's working for Satan. You're either working for God and getting your paycheck from him, okay, and resting in the vine, or you're working for the world, Satan, in your flesh. And this guy who's clean cut is knocking on the door, and he's robbing the weakest. Friends, when we go back into the Old Testament narrative, what we're going to see is Israel's coming out of Egypt. But the Amalekites attacked Israel. But where they attacked upset God so much, it just twisted God. Where God placed a curse, okay, upon the Amalekites because the Amalekites attacked the weak. They attacked the elderly. They attacked the sick. They attacked children. That's what would have been at the back of the pack. Do you understand? The elderly, a person who's sick, a person who has a broken leg. And so they would take their time, where the bigger and the larger portion of the group were hurrying, trying to get to the promised land. They were in a hurry. They had a goal in mind. And the Amalekites, they came, and they raped, and they killed, and they robbed. And friends, God says this, listen very carefully, I'm placing a curse on them. Friends, when you're attacking people who are weak, the elderly, or the orphan, or the poor, and there's many ways to do that. There are men that steal from those because they're smarter, because they think they're wiser, because they're more deceptive, meaning they're more cunning. They've mastered their craft, and they've mastered a way to steal from people in society. God says this, because he said it to the Amalekites, but he's speaking it to those out there who reside in darkness. I am against you, and I'm cursing you from this day forward. Friends, and God has spoken it so many times within Scripture that there is a curse when you go after his. The widow, the orphan, the poor, the outcast, the downcast. When you're going after a person who needs a helping hand, but you're kicking them while they're down, guess what? God's going to kick you. And he's not going to stop kicking you until your sorry tail rolls on through the gates of hellfire. These aren't Matt's words. These are God's words. You guys know I like to go to the Goodwill. I like to go to garage sales, Salvation Army. I love finding deals. I have yet to go to one of those places where I don't find the uniform, okay, for a postal worker or a Federal Express worker or for a UPS driver all the time. I find it all the time. They're not supposed to donate those things, but they do. And these organizations, these companies, they put them up on the rack. Friends, I have in my room right now an entire uniform for a FedEx driver. It's long sleeve, it's the winter wear, it's the whole get up. So I could legitimately clean up, get the hat, knock on someone's door, and I'm guessing maybe if I went to 10 houses, I'm guessing if a person was there and I'm carrying a box and I have some type of mechanism in my hand that looks like a computer, I'm guessing that 8 out of the 10 are going to what? Open the door. They really would. What do you need to do if you hear a knock on the door and you see someone through the peephole? Go to another window. Where's this truck? They don't walk around. They don't ride bikes. They don't ride scooters. They don't ride in unmarked vans. See, all these people had to do was go to the other side of their house and look. Hey, that's a cargo van. That's not a Federal Express van. Federal Express will never, ever show up to your house in a white van. And yet these people were taken advantage of because they were not wise. Where God says, be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Friends, you got to realize that the world is fighting against legitimate people like you and I. They're fighting against Christians. They will take advantage of the naive. Knock, knock, knock. Before you can open the door, some thug has just kicked open your door. But listen very carefully. You have your phone and you call 911. Someone is coming in the house. It looks like 2 or 3 men. They have a gun, they have a knife, and then they hit you in the face with a ball bat. Okay? How long is it going to take law enforcement to get to your house? Friends, listen very carefully. I want to share this with you. The national average is 8 minutes. What can a lost person who doesn't belong to God, who's hell-bent, okay, on hurting you and robbing you and raping your family over, what can they do in 8 minutes? How quick can they get off with your children, with your wife? How much loot can they get? They don't care about you. What they care about is themselves. And more times than not, they're robbing this way because they're high on drugs, which what? It numbs the part of the brain that says this is wrong. They don't know right from wrong because they're so doped up. You have to safeguard your life against these individuals. You make your house like unto a fortress. You don't let anybody into your house. Hey guys, knock, knock, knock. Who's going to answer the door? How about we go to the Old Testament and King Hezekiah answers the door? Okay? It's a couple guys from Babylon and they introduce themselves as representing the king of Babylon and they say this, hey, we're from Babylon. We're ambassadors. We heard you were really, really sick and gonna die. And, you know, the king of Babylon, he was really concerned and he sent us. And we just want to know if you're doing well. That's, you know, we're passing through and we have a lot of things we got to do. Are you okay? And the king starts talking to him and the king invites these men into his house. And he shows him his house, he shows him the palace, he shows him the temple, he shows him all of the gold, all the treasury, everything. And then the men leave. No sooner than the men leave, there's another knock on the door. You know I'm going to knock. Knock, knock, knock. Okay, who is it? It's Isaiah. And Isaiah the prophet says, hey, those men, what did they want with you? And Hezekiah is like real happy. He says, oh my goodness, they were ambassadors from Babylon. And, you know what I'm saying, they were concerned about how I was doing. You know what I'm saying? It's so awesome. You know what I'm saying? That, you know, it's a goodwill call. You know what I'm saying? It's awesome. And Isaiah says, what did you show them? And Hezekiah says, I showed him everything. I showed him the temple. I showed him my house. I showed him the treasury. I showed him all the gold and the silver and the jewelry. I showed him it's everything we had. I showed him. And he basically, you know what Isaiah says? He says this, he's going to come and get it all. He's going to wipe you out. But then Isaiah says this, but he's not going to do it in your lifetime. You see what I'm saying? It's going to be when your children are basically king and they're running the place. That, here's the thing. What you've done is you've planted a seed in a greedy man and a lost man's heart. That's what you've done. You've done this, okay? But Hezekiah, when he hears Isaiah, He's happy. So this isn't going to, so I'm not going to be attacked, right? I get to continue to live out my life. And he's like, well, that's awesome. You know what I'm saying? Because he's been given 15 years to life. Because remember, he was sick and God promised him, I'm going to give you 15 more years. Let me just share this real quick about that story. Up until the point where he got sick, this king was living in righteousness. He was doing the things that God would have him to do. And this is the king that put his head against the wall and he cried out and he started bringing God down memory lane of how he served him and how he loved him and how he tried to be a good king and obeyed him. And God granted him 15 additional years. But with the 15 more additional years that he was given, when we look back at that 15 years, he didn't live for the Lord. He lived for himself. And those 15 years were almost, a lot of people believe, a mistake. Yet, what Isaiah said to the king and prophesied was going to take place, it did take place. His house was looted. And here's the thing, he was a part of that. And while he's showing them around, what is he exuding? Pride. Look at my house. Who's it remind you of? It reminds me of Nebuchadnezzar. Again, a couple days ago, I had a devotion about Nebuchadnezzar walking on the portico of his house saying, is this not the Babylon that I have made? Look at me. Look at it. I'm the man. I'm the alpha male. Friends, pride will bring you to destruction. It preceded the fall within your life. You cannot trust men. That's what God said. That's not what Matt said. That's what God said, because the majority of men are of Satan. They're of the world. They're of their flesh. Their goals are different than your goals. What they want is different from what you want. You want to get along, go along. God's word says these men are about destroying and stealing, deceptions and darkness and lies and pleasure, even if it costs you your family. They could care less. Friends, I'm always amazed at the stories of people who are just basically putting their whole life on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest and basically look at my life. It's almost like their life isn't good enough, that they have to kind of promote their life to feel good about themselves. It's almost like they can't enjoy their life until they think others think that they're happy, and they're actually miserable because they wouldn't do that if they were happy. It's the honest truth. But I love the stories where they show their house, they show their garage, they show their pools, they show the pool parties. Anyone can visit their site. They love the thumbs up, and they even announce, hey, we're going on vacation between these dates. You know what I'm saying? And while they're on vacation, what ends up taking place? You know what takes place. People visit their house. You know what I'm saying? Friends, I'm telling you, God is telling you, you need to be wise in the end days. And you need, okay, to make sure your house is difficult to get into. Friends, you're not going to safeguard your house perfectly. If a person is just flying and tweaking out, they're going to just take a baseball bat to your window and come in. But here's the thing. Have a reception party for them when they come to visit. You see what I'm saying? And I think you know what I'm saying. Party on with them when they come through the door. You want your house so it's harder to get into, and that when they look at your house, they're like, man, I don't want to have any part of that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go to the easy target. See, robbers and thieves and deceptive, they always want the easy targets, just like the Amalekites. You need to make your place and your family safeguarded as much as possible. Friends, God is our source for protection. I want you to hear this. God is our source for protection, but He asks us to be wise. And He gives us these scriptures and He gives us these warnings because He doesn't want anything happening to us because we're naive, okay? And we're what? We're testing God. That was one of the tests with Jesus while He was in the wilderness. Throw yourself down. Isn't it written that you're not even going to bust your toe against a rock? He's going to send some angels. Friends, we never want to test the Lord God. We want to be, again, wise. That's what God would have us to be. We want to be smart. We want to be prudent, okay? We don't want to be arrogant. We don't want to be prideful. We want to get along and go along. But when you're promoting your life on social media, when you're bragging about this gift and that gift, and when you're doing these things, you are drawing the attention of the lost world. Friends, one of the conclusions that the law officers had come up with regarding the home invasion with the FedEx guy impersonator was this wasn't random. These individuals knew Somehow, some way, they knew. They knew that they had X amount of money, that they had X amount of value in different places. They actually went right to the safe. They knew there was a safe in the house. So guys, somewhere along the way, someone had mentioned something. Oh, my mom, you wouldn't believe this beautiful necklace she has. It probably is worth $40,000. And I can't believe, I tell them all the time, do not keep $50,000 cash in the vault. Even if it's a safe, you just don't want to do that. Friends, you can't do these things. Now, guys, one of the smart things that the elderly people did prior to being robbed by the FedEx fake, okay, is they had cameras set up professionally in their house. What the robbers didn't realize is they had 2 hard drives. So everything that was being filmed went to not 1 hard drive, but to 2 hard drives. The robbers grabbed the hard drive thinking, hey, all the footage of us robbing these people, okay, it's all on here. But the smart individuals, okay, will always, and the people that know what they're doing with installations will always tell you to have a hard drive in another location that's almost impossible to get. And here's the thing, it might be like a 5 terabyte card. So it could go for like 2 months, and after 2 months, it just starts re-recording over that. Also, another thing that a lot of people do is, guys, they have what's called trail cams. They're so cheap, and you hide them in a tree, and again, you can put a huge memory card in them, and what a trail cam does is when a deer walks in front, it takes pictures. So it allows the hunter to realize, hey, there's deer in this area. I mean, I threw a salt block out there. I figured they would eventually come for it and start licking on it, okay? And I can tell what's going on. Friends, I know a lot of people that put those in their yards, and periodically they'll check because they won't take pictures unless something large goes in front of the trail cam. Also, within your house, they have so many different cameras today, it's not even funny. I'm not talking about the cameras that are up in the corner. I'm talking about clocks that are cameras. I'm talking about wall outlets. I'm talking about all kinds of stuff. They sell them on Amazon. And when you go to a hotel room, people are so paranoid now because you can't even tell if there's a camera in these cameras, whether they're like a camcorder or just taking a single picture. It's an invasion of your privacy, but you can put those very things in your house and set it to where you never even have to touch it unless something takes place within your home. And then here's the thing, you're going to help the perpetrators get caught. Friends, I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. Basically, I can share the story, but I can't tell you about the guy. There was a lot of home invasions, a lot of robberies in his upscale neighborhood. And he was like, man, I don't want to, just leave me alone. And he's done everything he knew to do. But you know what he did? And I thought this was amazing. He went around the perimeter of his house with all the windows and doors, and he put an additional sprinkler system in there. And he drilled it out so when this sprinkler system went off, okay, it put out so much water, it would blow your mind. He had it with the motion sensor and he had it with the timer. And it was only when it was nighttime that he would set this thing off. And if he ever heard this thing, because it was loud, because he set it up correctly, I mean, it's putting out hundreds of gallons of water in a short amount of time. When you got anywhere near his door, his window, okay, this thing came on and it made noises and went, bah, 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 and it started squirting water everywhere. And you want to know what? 3 times within 1 month, it went off. And he looks, and there on the security camera is someone being there that shouldn't be there. He set it up in a way that animals wouldn't trip it off, so he put it up a little bit higher. Friends, you can do a lot of things, again, to what? Try to safeguard you. Those are what? Resources. He's ultimately your source. And you're like, well, Matt, that doesn't sound very scriptural. Doesn't the 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not kill? It says that, and that's a mistake. What it really reads in the original language is thou shalt not murder. You looking for the fight. But if someone is trying to hurt you, God says that you are to protect yourself, that you have the right to take life when your life is in danger. Friends, that's God's rules, not Matt's rules. God doesn't want you robbing people, shooting people. He doesn't want you being arrogant and pulling out a gun. Friends, he doesn't want any of those things. It is Jesus who said that he would not entrust himself with people because he knew their heart. The first time Jesus sent out the disciples, let me tell you what took place. He says, don't take any money. Don't take extra shoes. Don't take a bag. I want you to go just with what you're wearing And I want you to go visit, and those who accept you, allow your blessing to fall upon them. And those who reject you, they're going to reject me. I want you to shake the dust off your feet. You don't need anything. I'm enough. And when they went, they would go to a house and they'd start sharing about Jesus. And Jesus says, you don't need to go house to house. That's home base. You stay there. They're going to feed you. They're going to clothe you. They're going to take care of you. And you're going to visit that whole town. But if you go to someone's house and they reject the message, or a town rejects the message, you take off your shoes, cling them together. A curse will come upon them. Because when you go out, it's representing me. But the second time, Luke tells a different story. Now Jesus is going to send them out again. In Luke chapter 22, verse 36, but things have changed. And listen to this. Now Jesus says this. He said to them, but now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Jesus is saying, I want you to be prepared. I want you to be wise. You don't need to pull the sword, okay? You're not robbing anybody. See, Jesus is walking with the disciples. He was with them on earth, but now he's about to be what? He's about to go back to heaven. And he's saying, this is what you need to do ministry. I need you to be smart about this. I don't want you picking a fight. I don't even want you arguing. I want you taking your shoes off and cursing them in my name. And I'll put a curse on them. You know what I'm saying? I'll implode them and their lives. I mean, God can bring so much havoc and destruction and misery and pain and suffering and death into an individual's life that you've turned over because of a curse you would not believe. Why does God say, hey, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. And if you're given that opportunity to walk away in any situation, take the opportunity. You don't engage in insults or fighting or bickering. You get away from that. That's not of God, that's of Satan. Here's the thing. How many people have tried to win a battle, but they've lost the war? Let God fight your battles. But if the battle becomes known to you and there's no other option than you to fight, you fight like David. God says, I anointed his hands, for war, and his feet were like hinds feet. God will empower you just like he did Samson to get it on and get it done, if that ever transpires. But more times than not, it doesn't. But you have to do your due diligence in these end days, because God didn't give us these warnings for no reason. And I don't want to be on the line 8 minutes while someone is in my house wreaking havoc, I'm going to send them to meet Jesus, and I'm just going to be the appointment maker. Men, you need to safeguard your family. And because you're in the end days, you need to go over a few things with your family. You really do. Because you're head of household, and you need to lead by example. Again, let me just emphasize this. God is your source all the time. But he utilizes many resources. He really does. Too many times I was getting in trouble, and I was going to a place I wasn't supposed to go to, and God just blew out my tires on my car. I knew it was God, and I praised God for it. God will supernaturally protect you when we are naive. But God would rather you be smart about it. And again, you can't safeguard your life perfectly. That's why there comes trust and faith in a God who knows what tomorrow holds. And God does lead us and direct us, but it really helps when you will do your part and liken yourself unto Christ, who said, I know what's in his heart, and I don't entrust myself to him. And friends, that's really where we have to get into these end days. Friends, if I was to go over just half of the stories that have taken place over the last 4 or 5 years, you just wouldn't believe all the darkness and all the depravity that's out there. One of the stories that doesn't haunt me, that I think about a lot, is when I was at Habitat for Humanity, and I'm talking to a lady, and again, I'm wearing my John 3:16 shirt, and this lady, her voice is breaking up, and she's basically reciting John 3:16 for me. She goes, for God so loved the world, and she gets through it, and I go, ma'am, are you okay? And she tells me that someone broke into her house and brutally raped her. But friends, this lady, she was 65 years old. These people are whacked out in the brain, a lot of times we try to think of others. Well, here's the thing. Everyone has a certain amount of morality. That's not true. When they do these drugs, that is the sensor in the top of your brain that says no. When they're on Xanax, when they're high, here's the thing. It's basically, they want what they want, and you're just the means to the end. They could care less if they hurt you. They could care less if they hurt you or kill you. They don't care. They literally don't care. And these are the men that you need to safeguard yourselves from. Back when I was in Las Vegas, there was a scam going on where a young lady in her 20s that was beautiful would knock on the door. And you would look out the peephole and you were like, oh my goodness. And you might say, yeah, can I help you? And you're like, yeah, I'm looking for such and such. Could you help me? And it's a beautiful young lady. But on the left and the right of the door are like street gang members. I mean, it's ridiculous. And when you open the door, you trusted someone you didn't know, but God said, don't do it. These two men would go in there and they would wreak havoc on people. There was a season while I was in Las Vegas where every single night, we could hear the door, the bottom door handle moved, but it wouldn't open, okay? But we could hear them checking the door, and there was a gang going through. And every single night, someone got robbed and got hurt badly because there's about 25. Friends, I understand that you guys, you're men, and you're alpha males, okay? When you're looking at that many, and they're on drugs, okay? You're not going to be able to defend yourself. Yeah, let's say you took out 5, but there's 20 more. And what's most precious is in your house. Friends, you can't let them ever in the front door, and you have to safeguard your house so they never get in the front door. And you need to be wise in these end days, and you need to what? Think ahead. You need to do the things that God would have you to do. And again, God will never, ever, ever have you to live in a state of fear. That is a spirit that attacks people, and he doesn't let up. Once you go down that dark road, that spirit just continues to come on stronger and stronger and stronger, and you'll be scared of your freaking shadow. Friends, I have to always realize that my life is in God's hands, and yet God would have me to be wise. I can't predict when I'm going to die, but he knows the day that he has written that he's going to allow me to leave this life and open my eyes in heaven. But in between there, here's the thing. Let's make it hard for stupid people to harass me. So when God says the heart is deceitful, desperately wicked, don't call God a liar by trusting someone you don't know. Do you understand? Don't. Because God's just telling you up front what is in the heart of all men. And you know the capacity that you have to do evil if God just took one step back from you. Think about a lost world that is just wanting to consume and experience the next high in some type of pleasure and some kind of adrenaline rush. And they can, listen. There is no moral stop sign in their life because of what they're on. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Make sure you're in right relationship with God. Safeguard your life and your family's life. And always walk by faith, not by sight. He is our source. He uses many resources. And some of those resources, they start in calibers of 45. Use the hollow point. This is Matt, late night in the Man Cave.